thank you for coming to our seminar today. I know it was a tough choice actually, and we were saying that, like, where do you go when you've got all the amazing exhibitors downstairs and all these sessions on? So to introduce ourselves before we get started, I'm Amy Gilmour, one of the directors at For Leisure Recruitment, for those that we've not met before. I've been in recruitment for over 8 years now, but before that I was very much in fitness and ops. So lifeguard, PT, sales through to regional sales for a large leisure management business before ending up in recruitment. Matt will be leading on the second half of the session. If you want to introduce yourself, you probably do it better than me.
Yeah, maybe. My name's Matt Bannister. Nice to meet all of you today, guys. I've worked in the health, fitness and leisure industry for over 20 years, both in the UK and abroad. Before working in my current role, I've managed large health clubs, health and fitness clubs, large gyms in central London and the surrounding areas. I'm now an account manager at For Leisure Recruitment and really kind of specialise on recruitment for large gym chains, independent gyms, boutique gyms and startups as well.
Thanks, Matt.
Take a seat whilst you crack on.
Save your legs for a minute. So to introduce For Leisure before we get started on the actual presentation, we are a leisure specialist agency that recruit for all roles across the sector, permanent positions, but also we're the only leisure specialist agency that deploy temps out. So if ever you need cover staff for a one-off shift up to full-time hours, we have staff that cover the whole of the UK and all positions, and businesses come to us when they need that cover staff. I need someone tonight, I need someone tomorrow, I need someone for a mat cover, for example. Something that we work with a lot of trusts, councils, independent gyms, franchisees though, is around new projects, new openings and projects. So that might be a refurbishment like you're having soon, a brand new opening, or just peak trading where people may choose to outsource some of or all of the recruitment to us. So basically they can crack on with everything else that they have to do. So that's a personal favourite of mine, something I really like to get my teeth into because you can kind of see it through from start to finish, really get to know your business and the type of candidates that would be a good fit. So anyway, today we're here to talk about recruitment going into 2025. With what we now know, thanks to the budget announcement, about new wage laws, employment rights, and then Matt will be leading on hiring strategies with this information in mind. Bearing in mind I'm talking about new wage laws and employment rights, this is my disclaimer that I'm not a tax expert. I do recruitment, but some things from the budget announcement will massively impact our recruitment. So the things that I'm going to highlight are things to be aware of, maybe make a note of it, and then you can seek further advice if you need to from there. Basically, don't quiz me too much on the numbers. A good place for us to always start a conversation about recruitment is the current state of the recruitment market. It's safe to say it's still a candidate-led market, and we've probably been saying that now for a couple of years, actually more than that, since COVID. And the reasons come down to this low inclination to move, and that's still due to uncertainty within the economy, rising cost of living. Even the recent budget announcement has impacted how people feel about moving roles so quickly. People are hesitating. Now we have a stat of what percentage of the UK workforce is currently static. So they're just sat in their roles and they're not looking for work at all. Can anyone hazard a guess? This is our first bit of participation from the audience, please. So percentage of people in the UK, our workforce, that are happy in their roles or happy not working, so they're not actively looking. 50, 60, 70%? You're really close. It's 70% of the UK workforce is stagnant, so they're not actively looking. So we've got 30% of our UK workforce that are looking for roles. So Matt will come on to later is how we can tap into that 70% so we can recruit from everybody out there and not just the 30% that may apply for your job. Something else that we're seeing in the recruitment market a lot is higher number of rejections. So this is candidates that have gone through the process, been offered the job, and then actually deciding not to take it, which for us, as you can imagine, as recruiters, that's a really, really sad day. And the reason for that is, again, it comes down to this uncertainty. And if they find throughout the process that the job offer is not compelling enough due to salary and benefits, they're just deciding to stay put. Or what's really common is even a slight counter offer from an existing employer is enough to sway them to stay, because it's what they know and they're comfortable with. They know what their work-life balance is like, and that's another big thing. If on the process they don't get a sense of a positive culture, or that is going to be better for them, they're thinking, do you know what, I'm going to sit tight. So we're seeing more rejections than ever for job offers. So will that change? I think we're at a place now that we are where we are with this whole candidate. Is it a candidate's market? Is it a client-led market? I think we are where we are. A huge amount of our workforce are workers doing our operational positions, our PTs, our lifeguards, our FIs, our front of house staff. They typically earn in our industry around minimum wage or a little over. So over the last couple of years, they've gained fairly significant pay rises due to the rise in national minimum wage. And rightly so, or arguably they need it. What we know for 2025 is that is rising to £12.21 an hour for our over 21s, so plus 6.7%. And for our 18 to 20-year-olds, it's going up to £10. So that's a staggering 16% pay rise that they will see. So come April the 1st, 2025, people that were on minimum wage, age 18, 19, are going to get a £2,900 pay rise. So when going back to sort of, will that change? I mean, they're going to see more money in their pocket. So again, will they be that compelled to move into a similar role? And for our industry, it's difficult to see that salary rise sort of go much higher. We're finding that people are really only moving for quite compelling offers like £7,000 to £10,000 pay rise, which is very difficult to achieve in a similar role in our industry, fitness instructor to fitness instructor, or even a slight step up in responsibilities. So whilst the employees are benefiting, our 18 to 20-year-olds have received a £2,900 pay rise, our 21 and overs are receiving a £1,601 pay rise. That of course comes at a cost to you guys, to us. And that's going to obviously be quite tricky for everybody to swallow. For a gym with one team member, that's 1,601. For 5 team members, that's 8k in payroll. And for our bigger organisations, for 50 staff that we're talking to, it's 80k in payroll, just in the increase in minimum wage. So it's going to be very tricky to swallow. I promise it's not all doom and gloom. We've got to get this budget announcement bit out of the way. The second big thing that's going to really impact our recruitment is, of course, the update in national insurance. So I'm sure this won't be new news to any of you, but we currently pay 13.8% national insurance. It's rising to 15% from April. But the biggest double whammy that the government have done to us with this announcement is that they have decreased the employment threshold from 9,100 down to 5,000. So what this means is currently we only pay 13.8% employers' national insurance once somebody has exceeded that threshold of the 9,1. We're going to be paying it so much sooner here, down at 5,000. One good thing that was announced, though, is that the employment allowance for businesses is being increased up to 10,500 from 5. So for small organisations, that will suck up some of that increased costs. But for the bigger companies that we're talking to, they said it's just not going to touch the sides. Quick calculation here. A casual FI working 16 hours on minimum wage is currently costing you 9,500. From April, they're going to cost you 10,900. So that's an increase in 1,300 and something pound in payroll. But the biggest difference here is the E&I on this worker is around £57. On this one is 773, because we're paying it so much sooner. So again, we're paying it at 15%, but because we're paying it from 5,000, it means we're having to apply the employer's national insurance to a lot more of the wage. So it's quite a scary calculation when you look at it, like that. The final change, which is set to come in 2026, that we need to be aware of, get a heads up on, is the Employment Rights Bill. Has anyone heard of that? Yes. Can you tell me any key points for a bonus, Mark?
Someone can take their employer to a tribunal from the get-go.
Yeah, so Employment Rights Bill is very likely to come in 2026. Experts are telling us it's 99% going to happen. So we need to get ahead of it. The biggest change, you're exactly right, is around day one rights. So currently, employees can be dismissed pretty easily under 2 years, but they will have rights from day one. They will also have day one rights to things like parental and sick leave. So a worst case scenario for us is somebody could start, do a day, and then go off sick and be entitled to sick pay. So that is obviously quite a risk to us. It's hopefully going to aim to combat sort of a hire and fire culture that businesses may have. But the biggest impact I think it will have on our industry is around zero-hour contracted workers, because at the moment we can book them when we want them, and then we can cancel their shifts if we don't need them. But what it will mean is they will have guaranteed hours and they will be protected. So those hours just can't be cancelled down. So that will have a big impact on the organisations that use a lot of casual staff and part-timers to help with peak trading, to help with seasonal activities and those kind of things. So people will really have to evaluate their workforce. So in terms of what that means for us, I think companies will be more restricted in their ability to hire. So that could in turn lead more candidates left on the market. It will be hospitality and leisure that will be hit the hardest in this. It always is, unfortunately. So we could look to increase our fees, but of course there's only so much that our customers will take. We could reduce our costs elsewhere, but I'm sure everybody's done that as much as they can. Or we can evaluate our headcount. But again, there's not many businesses I know operating with too many extras these days. I think a lot of that's already been done. So now we've talked about kind of what we know is coming. As I said, I appreciate a lot of that probably isn't new news to you, but it's really just to bring it to the forefront of our minds to be aware of and how it's going to impact recruitment. What we're going to move on to is what our recruitment strategy could look like with those factors in mind. What will be absolutely key here is that we retain and develop the team members that we do have. So can we look to upskill anybody that we have in the business to work across departments? For example, do you have an FI, a fitness instructor, that is quite techie? So could they maybe help in training, payroll, systems, social media? Could a colleague of theirs who is quite interested in the operational side of things, could you get them involved in health and safety? The smaller businesses are going to have to utilise people across departments more. But what we're actually seeing is that will, of course, help retain the interest of your employees. Research has shown that generations from Gen Z and younger really, really want to feel that there's value in their role, value in their time. So they're not just looking at the salary and the job title, which is probably 10, 15 years ago all I would have looked for. I don't think on interview I would have asked, what's your learning and development budget for me? What's your learning and development program for me? But that is being asked, and it's being asked on application stage. So we need to have that in mind. Now, small businesses may not have a learning and development budget or a set plan. Certainly some of the larger trusts, I imagine that you do. But there are lots of training providers out there and actually funding. We managed to tap into funding recently for our business, and I didn't think we'd be entitled, but we were. So there is lots of funding out there for government organisations, charity organisations, lots of different training providers that can help upskill the staff. And again, the big point here is that they feel more satisfied in their role whilst you're actually covering more bases across the business. So it's a double plus. So We have pretty much talked about things that we need to be aware of. Obviously, employers' national insurance coming in, rising minimum wage, making sure that those plans are all in place ready for April, getting ahead of the Employment Rights Bill likely to come in 2026. I'm now going to hand you over to Matt, who's going to talk about actually how to attract and retain talent with those things in mind. So I do think Matt got the better half of the presentation, but I appreciate you guys for sticking with me through that bit. Sorry, before we hand over, has anyone got any questions on that bit at all?
It's a lot of figures.
It was a lot of figures. Actually, I don't think I looked at my notes once. So.
No, you did very well.
No questions. I'm sure it wasn't new news, but people are just thinking, this actually is going to impact us. So that's certainly a conversation we're having internally is we should probably do something about this. And I think we need to get some HR professionals in as well. Right, there you go, Matt.
Hopefully I'll get the clicks in the right place. So as Amy said, hopefully I've got the slightly more fun parts of today's presentation. I will be focusing on how we can tackle some of the points that Amy has mentioned and talking about some of the processes of recruitment. So the first thing that I want to talk about is creating an enticing employer proposition. So in the current market, you really need to think about why a candidate would actually want to work for you. That might sound a bit crazy, but it is genuinely the current market that we are operating in. So are you already an employer of choice? Maybe, maybe not. You need to think about why someone would actually want to work for you. What are you offering? Does the company, do you have a good culture? Are there good benefits? And do you provide learning and development? Something Amy kind of touched on a little bit earlier. Research shows that staff members really want to feel part of something and that there is value within their role. Further benefits obviously are of interest. This might be difficult for us in the health and fitness industry, as we typically can't offer working from home, we typically can't offer big bonuses. Research has shown, though, that the biggest impact often comes from small gestures of recognition, or even just of being acknowledged. So do you have a regular rewards and recognition scheme in your workplaces? Does that exist? Got a no, got a couple of yeses. Okay, cool. It could even be something as simple as team member of the month, work anniversaries, or having your birthday off. For leisure recruitment, in our office, we have recently added that in. It's been a really big hit in the office. Unfortunately, my birthday hasn't come around since joining, but it will soon.
Sorry, just to interject on that. I stole that because another company I recruit heavily for, when I spoke to their team and said, what do you love about working for this company? They went, I get my birthday off. I was like, cool, okay, anything else? And I know of all the fantastic things they also offer, but that's the first thing they wanted to tell me when I asked them. So I thought, you know what? We can manage that as a business, and that's not going to cost us a huge amount. And genuinely, it's the main thing our team talk about now. And I think the amount of things we've tried to add value for them, that's been the biggest hit in the 8 years I've been there. So.
I've worked for large gym chains, I've worked for smaller independents, I've probably worked for maybe 5 or 6 sort of different gyms, health and fitness centres. For leisure recruitment is only the second workplace that has offered their birthday off. So, I mean, I think it's probably something within the health and fitness industry. It's a really easy win, like Amy has said. And, you know, having these sort of things in place, don't just keep the staff that you've got there happy, it can also lead to referrals as well, which is a really good way of kind of picking up new people. Can anyone here in the room give us a different example than what Amy and I have just mentioned? Is there kind of any examples that you can give of sort of things that you have in place?
We have a staff holiday.
Okay.
Which every year there's a holiday that's paid for by the company. We're a big climbing centre.
Oh, cool.
So a lot of the staff that work at our centre are avid climbers, and we organise a climbing holiday with buses and take not truckloads, but we have a certain number of spaces on that holiday.
Okay.
It's normally up to about a dozen spots.
I was going to say, but you need to keep enough staff on site to actually keep operating.
We have to monitor that very carefully.
Okay.
But we use it as a tool to incentivise people, and it's once a year, and you can apply to go on the holiday. If you don't get it one year, you could get first dibs next year.
Is it mandatory?
Yeah. It's not actually, but that's an interesting
Forced fun.
forced fun, but I think it would potentially work. But
Yeah.
it's interesting because when you think about retention, they are so memorable, like they get talked about all for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So you get staff who apply for one, and I'm sure it's not the only thing that helps with retention. There's going to be lots of other things that help with retention or impact with nutrition and stuff like that. But it's something we're well known for in the industry.
Okay. That's a really great example. Does anybody want to follow that up? It might be a tough one.
Just to let everyone know, our budget is actually only £6,000.
Okay.
So, and the cost of actually providing that versus the payoff, it's hard to measure the payoff. Maybe an EMPS score or something is kind of impacted by that, but our wage bill is pretty high in 6 days.
Yeah.
A fraction of it.
Yeah.
I think that's a great example. Anybody else want to share one?
We do little sort of monthly challenges.
Cool.
I guess they're KPIs, but we'll give them a sort of a small bonus if they achieve them.
Yeah.
And they're usually kind of team.
So not necessarily linked to your kind of standard week-to-week, month-to-month KPIs, but kind of something slightly different.
It could be organising like a charity event, or doing
Okay.
like a team challenge in the gym, that
Okay.
kind of thing. Just making people feel like they're more included
Yeah.
and rewarded as a result.
I like that. That's another good example. Thank you, guys. So, I mean, look, there's just a few examples. I'm sure with all of the experience in the room here, you can come up with other engaging ways of, sort of bringing those rewards and recognitions to your places of business. The big takeaway from this subsection is that small gestures really can make a positive impact on your staff or even your potential hires. You also need to think about where you are pitched in the market regarding pay rates, bonuses, those sort of things. How do you stack up to the local competition? What about in your region, your area of the UK? Obviously differs from place to place, region to region. Any unique offering that you can provide will help you stand out with the retention of your staff and also the recruitment of new team members. Obviously, a high salary, a strong bonus scheme are extremely attractive, but this is not the only thing, or sometimes even it's not the most important thing that a candidate is looking for, especially at the beginning of their employment journey. As mentioned before, you might not be in a lucrative enough position to offer a high bonus. So think about the other things that you can introduce. Research shows that staff are more interested in their career development, not just things such as Pizza Fridays. Sounds great, but they're looking for something more long-term, something more meaningful. Having spoken to many candidates on the phone myself, I really can vouch for this. It's what we get asked all the time. So people looking for new roles are more focused on their career development and personal progression. So yes, salary is important. You don't want to be offering below market salary, but you also need to be thinking about the ways in which you're going to keep staff, retain staff for the next 12 to 24 months. Perfect. Which moves us nicely into mindset matters. If you do find yourself needing to recruit, think about your mindset before starting the process. This might sound a bit silly, but it really could be the difference in recruiting a superstar to your vacant role or even recruiting somebody at all. Hiring for your business is a two-way thing. Candidates will be judging you as well as you judging them. So you need to look at your recruitment process as a sales process. You are essentially selling yourself and your business. So is what you are selling, is your product attractive? Many hiring managers think it will be really easy and just assume that people will want to work for them. Unfortunately, this currently isn't the case anymore. And as Amy mentioned earlier, the passive candidate market is currently around 70% of the UK workforce, which means they're not currently looking for a job at present. Therefore, there is a lower number of applications being made to job ads at the moment, and often many of those applications won't have the required qualifications or skill set for the role that they've applied to, even if you specified that in the job ad. Moving on from this, offering somebody the role after interview doesn't always mean that they will accept the job. We're seeing more and more candidates rejecting a job offer and deciding to stay in their current employment. Candidates nowadays are just more comfortable doing this than they were in the past. As an example, recently, 2 out of the last 5 offers that have been made to me by clients, the candidate has actually gone on to reject those offers. So obviously, in my role, I've done my absolute best to either change the mind of that person or find them a replacement as soon as possible. But yeah, please trust us when we say candidates are just much more comfortable rejecting these offers now. So you need to ask yourself why this might be happening before you start the recruitment process. And it can all be linked back to the previous section that I just discussed. Salary being offered, bonus structure, working hours, and very importantly, the company culture. So you mustn't go into the recruitment process without a positive mindset. It's key that you go in with this positive mindset. You don't want to grill people in the interview process, and you don't want to put them under too much pressure. Again, this has changed and is likely to put the candidate off wanting to work for you. So make sure you're valuing your candidates, especially the ones that you really want to hire. As mentioned previously, don't make them a lowball offer, and pay them what they're worth. That is key as well. Finally, make sure you're making quick decisions. And this will lead us nicely into our next section. If you don't pull the trigger and take too long making a decision, you will likely lose your preferred candidate. So that leads nicely into proactivity, what I was just saying. So this is really important. And as the slide said, proactivity wins. You need to think about and stick to the basics. This might sound a little bit obvious, but it's actually quite shocking how many people don't follow the basics when recruiting. So let's talk about the basics to begin with. Be interesting to see kind of how many of these things you guys do, how many of these things that you might be a bit uncomfortable with or haven't even thought about. So first of all, is your careers page visible? Are the job adverts that you've posted, are they up to date? Are they written concisely to pick up keywords? And do they highlight the company culture and benefits? If you're even remotely interested in an application, make sure that you respond within 48 hours, okay? Time to hire really matters. So here's a little question for you. It'd be interesting to see what you guys come up with. Does anybody know what the average time to make a hire is? So from starting that process, what do we think the kind of average time to actually make a hire is?
4 months.
4 months, ooh, big one to start with.
Between 9 and 10 weeks.
Between 9 and 10 weeks, okay. Look, recruiters are always talking about this as a key metric, and there's loads of stats available, but in general, we say it takes around 36 to 42 days to make a hire. So a little bit higher on that side, yeah, not too far off. But when you think about it, that's actually quite a long time, and that does sound like a long time, but think about the tough roles to fill. They could have already been offered and rejected multiple times. So you really do kind of need to sort of get a move on, essentially. For entry-level roles, ideally you're wanting to make those hires within 2 to 4 weeks. Okay, the more senior positions, yes, they might take that little bit longer. You know, sometimes maybe up to 2-3 months. Hopefully not 4 months. You know, the more senior positions, people have that longer notice period. But for the entry-level roles, you're really wanting to make a hire within 2 to 4 weeks. There's an example here you wanted to give.
There's a couple of examples. I think I recently read a stat that within health and fitness at ops level, people will probably have about 4 job opportunities at any one time. So if you're taking longer than 2 to 4 weeks, there's a very, very high chance that they're going to have taken one of the 3 offers. Say it's candidate-led market, they've got more choice. So something to be quite snappy for. And from an operational perspective as well, a client that I started working with, their time to hire was over 40 days. And through doing these absolute basics, this isn't like revolutionary stuff around the communication side, inviting people to interview, not sitting on CVs for weeks. They've actually got their time to hire down to 13 days over the last 6 months. And we recruit a lot for them. And that's purely down to them agreeing the recruitment process as a management team and sticking to it. We put it in a contract, sticking to it. So they have to respond to candidates within 2 days. They have to invite to interview within 5 to adhere to our contract. But what this has meant is their need for cover staff has dropped. So actually operationally, they're not closing pools. They're not cancelling swim lessons because they're filling roles within 13 days, not over 40. Sorry, Matt.
No, that's great, thank you. So essentially, don't wait to see what you get come through. Make a decision quickly or you will lose people. Be prepared to sell yourself, like I mentioned earlier. And if you are keen to speak to somebody after that first stage interview, arrange that second stage interview within 5 days. Amy just touched on that a little bit as well. Be specific on when a decision will be made and stick to it. Don't make false promises to the candidates. And then, as I've mentioned earlier, offer appropriately. You'll take the shine off an offer pretty quickly if you insult them with a lowball offer. If you know what they want, either give it to them, or if you're not able to, don't lead them along. keep the communication up at all times, which I'll speak about a little bit later on. And then onboarding really matters. Some of you might even ask, what do I mean by onboarding? But having a robust onboarding process will be their first impression of you, their first impression of the company, and can have a real impact on retention. Another little question that I've got here for you, I might give you an example first. Just kind of having discussed all of that so far, what sort of bad examples, what shockers have you guys seen in terms of a recruitment process? The example that I'm going to give you is a candidate of mine. We had interviews arranged with the client 3 times. On all 3 occasions, the client changed the day, changed the times. Finally, when the candidate did actually turn up on site for the interview, after 30 minutes, the client still hadn't turned up for that interview process. And then when he was on site, the interview got rearranged, well, cancelled for that day and essentially rearranged again. Suffice to say, that candidate withdrew their application. You know, it's really not a good experience. Is there kind of any experiences that you've been involved in personally, or that you've seen from, you know, kind of actually a hiring manager side that you can share? I know Amy will have a few, but it'd be interesting to see if anybody else does.
We get a lot of people applying for jobs and not turning up for them.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the other side, you know, that's the candidate side, but which obviously, you know, you don't want, we don't want either. You know, sort of when we're speaking to candidates, you know, we're preparing them for interviews, we're making sure that they're dressing appropriately, making sure that they know exactly where they're going, that they're turning up on time. But yeah, obviously as a hiring manager, that's frustrating on your side.
Is that because they qualify for
Job seekers.
job seekers?
It can be.
Possibly.
We do find that with more like entry-level roles
Yeah.
that will have mass applications, and they will confirm interviews to be able to show that they had booked interviews. So that isn't uncommon. I think for a large assessment day for, say, a front of house team member, if I booked 10, I would hope that 6 or 7 showed up, to be realistic. Yeah, so I'd probably try to book 12, just knowing that that's going to happen.
Before I move on, any other examples from anyone?
No, from our side, certainly the biggest place where it falls apart is the changing of interviews. It just doesn't go down well with a candidate. It takes a lot just for logistics, whether or not that's outside of work or their own shifts, to arrange an interview, especially if they're trying to be discreet. So when it gets rearranged, it is very disappointing. So we do our best to manage that. And of course, operational issues come up. Okay, the plant room's flooded, or all these things that can happen. And we do need candidates that will be flexible and understanding. But when it goes as far as the second or third time of being rearranged, actually, perhaps internally, it needs to be reviewed if somebody else could lead on the process if you just don't have the capacity to do so.
I think that's a really good point that Amy has made. I think a lot of hiring managers forget that the person interviewing with you probably most times already has employment. So, you know, for them to get away from work, if it's not a work from home role, which obviously our industry tends not to be, it can be difficult for them to get away from work. You know, they do have to rearrange meetings, rearrange their time. So yeah, really, really good point.
It's an interesting one that I haven't thought about for a while, because it's easy to make the assumption that people know how to interview a candidate.
Correct. Yeah.
And that, I don't think there's necessarily an obvious way of doing it if you haven't been shown.
Yeah.
So what tends to happen if you don't give your team training is they turn an interview into a tour.
Yeah.
It becomes, I'm going to tour you around this.
And in our industry, that's probably easier. You know, you've got an obvious site to tour, a gym, a swimming pool,
They used to
that sort of thing. Yeah.
It becomes a monologue about the business.
Yeah.
And if you challenge your junior manager at the end of that interview and say, what have you learned about the candidate in the last hour?
Yeah.
Nothing, because you haven't asked them any questions. You've given them a tour of the
Yeah,
city.
correct. And that comes back a little bit to what I mentioned earlier. You know, it's gone are the days of grilling a candidate in an interview. You know, that very much used to be the interview style. Put them under as much pressure as you can, see how they react to it, see what answers they give. You know, that all comes into that kind of ways of interviewing. And again, yeah, a lot of people don't necessarily know how to do that, and that's a really integral part of the process.
The pendulum has swung from grilling them nastily
Yeah.
all the way over to better not ask them any questions.
Yeah.
So-
Well, and this
It's a
all links
skill
into
to
what we're
interviewing.
talking about. You know, what benefits, what culture do you have? You know, like you say, it has swung. And, you know, candidates who are interviewing with you now, you know, they want to know those sort of things. They're more empowered to ask you those questions, which before they probably didn't have that confidence to do so. So let's just now focus a little bit on how to recruit. In general, I would imagine that most of you, if you are recruiting, if you're the hiring manager, are taking on general managers, club managers, assistant managers, maybe sales managers, duty managers, fitness instructors, personal trainers. It sounds like we've got some pools, or some sites with pools in the room, so lifeguards as well. If I was to ask a lot of hiring managers how they recruit, they would just say, oh, I chucked the job up on Indeed. Okay? The goal is to get you in front of the biggest and the most relevant audience. Okay? So the first thing that I want to do is talk about advertising. So don't just post a job description. It's not a ransom note. Okay? This is your sales pitch, and you have roughly 14 seconds to keep somebody engaged before they click off. So not very long at all. So the first half of that needs to be to sell, and the second half, tell. Keep it nice and concise. Okay? Make sure you're using appropriate language. Most of the job boards do have an AI tool now, which you can use, but make sure that you check it before posting. Sometimes it can go a little bit rogue. Doing it yourself and having a template for further job ads is probably your best bet in general. Like we've mentioned, inbound applications are flat at the moment. So relying on a single job board to get you a result is a surefire route to failure. A campaign approach, including direct engagement, will always deliver better quality. Make sure that you use or you learn the search engine basics. For example, don't have a sales job advert out that doesn't even have the word sales in it. Sounds silly, but it's quite common. The next thing, and a really important part of this is to think about proactive searching. Amy's already mentioned the figures, I think maybe I have as well. So the latest stats show that passive candidates account for as much as 70% of the UK workforce. So these are people who would consider a move, but aren't actively looking. So they're not on the job boards, they're not desperate to work for you. But if we approach them with an intriguing proposition, there's a chance that you might turn around that decision, there's a chance that you might generate some interest in them working for you. Do you want the best candidate or the best of what's available? There's a lot of talent that you could be missing. So why do agencies, such as us, have success? It's because we can get hold of the passive candidates. So you might kind of ask, how do you get hold of them? You can set up CV databases, you can set up alerts, you can do your searches on LinkedIn, which does come with a little bit of an additional cost. Or again, you could use an agency to help this for you. The next thing to think about is having a dedicated careers page. This really is a non-negotiable. So we build specialist pages for our clients because recruitment is always an ongoing process. If you want people to work for you, they need to be able to see what you do, why they should work for you, and they need to be alerted to when you have a vacancy. So this is your chance to showcase what you do as an employer. Again, think of it a little bit like a sales tool to candidates. This is where you can capture the passive job seekers that we've just talked about. It's your own personal audience, and of all the things that I've mentioned so far, this really will reduce your time to hire. Finally, on this section, get the tech working for you guys. So set up candidate alerts so you're aware when somebody registers an interest in working for you, even if you're not currently hiring. That's really important. You would be surprised how many businesses miss out on hiring candidates because they haven't even viewed people that have made contact with them. So that leads us into managing a pipeline, which is a bit of a shorter section, still up here at the moment. But managing a pipeline can be a really useful tool. This is something that the larger gym chains do really well and could benefit you with your future recruitment. If you have a pipeline of candidates, it means you won't always have to start from scratch when recruiting. And if you manage your pipeline well, it might even mean that for future hires, you don't even need to put out a job ad because you've got a pool of talent there waiting for you. If you interview multiple people for a role, but like more than one person, give the people that you rejected some positive feedback and explain to them why it was a close-run decision. If you give them just some small feedback and let them know why somebody else picked them to the job, it gives them the opportunity to go away and work on those things. Let them know that you would consider them for the role in future or even a different role with you, okay? And then stay in contact with that person and actually check in with them every now and again. This is a big thing that a lot of people do, is they say, oh yeah, I think you could be great for a role with us in the future. They don't retain their contact information, they don't check in with them, and then essentially you lose that candidate. Also, there's no point giving them a call about a vacant role if they've recently just accepted a new one. So using tools such as LinkedIn to see what they're up to, what their movements are, and to stay in contact with them is really useful. You can also do your proactive searches on LinkedIn. That's one of the really big tools that we use. That's how you can add additional people to your pipeline, essentially. So as mentioned a couple of minutes ago, having a careers page is essential. This gives people the opportunity to send you their CV and express an interest for you or working for you even when you don't have a live role. So this is another great way of building a strong pipeline. Now, like I mentioned, the pipeline is really definitely used by a lot of the larger gym chains. You might not think it's relevant to some of the small businesses, but definitely worth thinking about. So let's move on. So just the key takeaways for today. Always keep an eye on the market, guys. Make sure that you are being reactive to it. To be honest, being proactive would be great. So keeping an eye on what's going on, keeping an eye on the trends, and actually making decisions ahead of time. Keep an eye on things such as salaries and bonus structures that are being offered by other employers, and especially the competition and the other gyms, the other health and fitness centres in your area. Listen to as much advice on these things as you can, especially with things such as staffing structures, which kind of all links back to what Amy was mentioning earlier, and speak to industry specialists. Whether that be well-known people within the health and fitness industry, whether that be recruitment agencies. There are people that can help and that can provide support. You might think that you don't have enough time to do a lot of what we've discussed today, or especially a lot of what I've discussed. So again, that's where recruitment agencies can come in and really provide you that key support. A key takeaway here is always have a contingency plan, guys. What happens if 2 people leave your business tomorrow? What happens if your preferred candidate that you've offered the role decides to reject it? This is where the pipeline comes in. That can be a really useful tool. Okay? So being decisive is really more important than ever. Sitting on the fence, you're going to lose candidates. So have a robust structure and stick to it in the recruitment process. So that's it for today, guys. If there's any questions, please do let us know. We can take questions now. We can have a little bit of a chat at the end.
So you want to have anything that they want to get through recruitment-wise at all? Your business?
Is anybody currently recruiting? And does anybody think they're kind of looking to recruit some point soon? Yeah?
Big argument for employing people for 8 hours a week.
It's a tough one. Yeah. What sort of roles is that? Lifeguards? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the increases.
Yeah.
You should put a threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which.
Yeah, that was it's a bit of a double whammy there with the E&I. Until we did the calculations, we didn't really quite realise how much it would affect the part-time workforce. Yeah, it is big.
It's going to encourage a lot of internal promotion as well.
I think so.
If you've been in the business, which might not be great news for you guys.
No, but that's why we're talking about the training and the learning development. It's going to be absolutely key, because you're right. I think people will really look to keep the people that they do have.
And that's why part of this focus was retention as well. Obviously, like you say, might not be great for us guys, but if we're recruiting for anybody, we want to make sure that they're taking on the right people. We want to make sure that it's a long-term option for them. That's the win for us as well. Retention is just as important now as actual recruitment is. When you're recruiting, are you making the right hires? Are you taking on people that, one, want to be with you long term? Are you taking on people that you think will be with you long term?
Yeah, it's difficult to see up front, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think showcasing with your business is a good idea. When people come in, especially like a gym, you could almost encourage people to have a session or I don't know, like a one-to-one walk around and showcase yourself a bit more.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Just really get a feel for it. Yeah.
I think a lot of hiring managers also focus a lot on CVs. What jumps out from them from a CV? Does somebody have, specific industry knowledge? But do you have roles where people coming from different industries with different experience have that cross experience, that would relate well to the role that you're hiring for? I think in our industry for many years, a lot of people just focused on, I'm taking on an assistant gym manager. They've only worked in the gym for 6 months. people do come from different industries with different skill sets, and you've got to read beyond the CV a little bit. Obviously, the interview process is going to help with that. You need to ask the right questions. You need to see, what other experience they've got that will be relevant for your role. But I think as hiring managers, sometimes you've got to take the leap a little bit with people. You might, a lot of the roles that we have on at the moment, vast majority of the people who are applying aren't necessarily from the health and fitness industry.
Hey, if I see a barista from Starbucks, I think, cool, they can multitask. They can work under pressure to a fast pace.
The man on recently that was working as a car salesman, he's absolutely brilliant with the customers. Anyone that comes in, he's like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
because
that's still an industry that's quite direct in a way, sort of still got that, those mannerisms which can transfer really, really well into the industry.
I've just hired a gym manager and an assistant gym manager for a new boutique gym in Wales. Neither of them have worked in the gym and health and fitness industry before, but they're both.
So that's pretty good, to manage to get, the owners, the hiring team to see how transferable
got to read between the lines a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We just be a bit more open-minded.
They're both personal. They both, happy to approach people, speak to them on the gym floor. In terms of sales, they're happy to pick up the phone. They're not scared to do that. They've got great skill set. But without kind of pushing my client a little bit, he probably wouldn't have interviewed them in the first place.
Well, thanks, guys. We will be here all day. So if you want to chat, then do come and see us. We have got a hamper up for grabs downstairs as well. Yeah. And actually, some of the stats to win the hamper we've gone through today, so we may have given some people the answers.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you all.